My friend H. Thomas Ackermann here has made a brilliant video discussing Jody Wilson Raybould and Jordan Peterson, and in a previous video he shared a video of Jordan Peterson, and I became interested in the guy because of the stuff that he was exposing about Marxism, and I had to listen to some of his lectures, and I noticed there was quite a lot of protest against him, and I realised that Jordan Peterson is quite an intellectual person. He's very well educated in the field of human psychology, and he's trying to apply it literally to society and raising issues, questions about, like, for example, whether every white person is racist just because they're white, the idea of white supremacy is questioning, and also the issue of patriarchy, and also issues around LGBTs, and you know, my recent video, By the Will of God, is questioning Christians' attitude towards various gender groups, you know, and so what I'm trying to do is level things out a bit, because I understand, as I've explained underneath this video to H. Thomas Ackermann, I've shared my take on Jordan Peterson, which is that he is very misunderstood, and I think he's misunderstood by both his followers and his detractors equally. And to give an example, let's take Darwin. Darwin wrote his theory about evolution. Again, it's been very misunderstood. The people who support him and valued his input, eventually a group of those people developed the idea of eugenics, which is the idea that there are superior humans and inferior humans, and the whole of humanity is taking part in survival of the fittest, and only the most fittest, most suitable humans shall succeed in the world. Darwin very much disapproved of this abuse of his theory, which is what he saw it as. He explained that the fittest of the fittest refers to species, not to individuals among the species, really. And it certainly doesn't apply to the human race, in the sense of, you know, what would be fit for a human. Because my friend Dave Godin, known affectionately as the granddaddy of soul, who, well, he brought the world's attention to soul music that was being produced by the very oppressed Afro-American people of the 1960s, and he opened a shop up called Soul City in central London, and it was through Dave that people like Marvin Gaye and Aretha Franklin became household names. And he put together these Deep Soul Treasure albums, 4 of them in all, and all the proceeds from these albums went to either the original stars, if they were still alive, or the families of the original stars. And one of the stars was found living in a shop out, you know, he was homeless, all his possessions were in a shopping trolley. And as a result of Dave's Deep Soul Treasure albums, he got his life back, basically, and he actually started singing again. One young lady wrote to Dave thanking him profusely. She had not realised that her grandmother had produced this record, had been a singer. And the Deep Soul Treasure albums were comprised, well, they are comprised, and they are for sale. I'll leave a link under this video, of very rare soul songs that, well, they were from Soul Records, very rare records, because sometimes only 50 of these records would be produced. So, you know, Dave, being an avid collector during the 60s, had a lot of what are the only copies left in existence. So a lot of the songs are very rare. He does include some not so rare but popular, very popular songs as well in his albums. And on his last album that he made, he was dying of cancer. He was literally on his deathbed. He was bedridden, and well, I say dying of cancer because when Dave said to me, you know, I'm dying of cancer, and I said, well, actually, you are living with cancer until you die, until you are actually dying. At the moment, you're living with cancer. And it was while that he was living with cancer, he put together the last of the Deep Soul Treasure albums. And because I helped him choose which songs to include, which records to include, and which order, he does accredit me on the album, the final album, which, you know, I was surprised because he said he was going to include, you know, I'll add a thank you, and I was like, well, no, you don't need to do that. I haven't done anything apart from help you play the records and choose the order and things. But no, but that was Dave, you know. But the point I'm making here is that even though he was bedridden, completely disabled, that man did something. He was still working for humanity to the very day that he died. He was working on getting these Deep Soul Treasures albums done, to make sure the relatives were found, to make sure all the stars, to make sure that they were going to get royalties from these albums. He took nothing from it himself, you see. So he was fit until the moment he died, because his brain was working, he was active, he was doing something. But a lot of people would have said, well, he's unfit, you see. But unfit for what? Even somebody who hasn't got all the faculties, nonetheless may be supporting somebody just by their very presence in the world, because they are loved by somebody, and that person treasures this person who, according to other people, might say, well, you know, they're unfit. And that is why nobody should judge, you see, between humans about who's fit or who isn't fit, you see, because we're all fit as much as we're doing something positive and we're not harming. And this is a point that H. Thomas Ackermann makes here, and it's a brilliant point. I mean, he does make some brilliant videos, and I really, really advise people to check him out, H. Thomas Ackermann. So he does make that point here, you know, about conscience, care and conscience and consciousness. And the point being that we do something good in this world, that we're doing something positive, we're doing something constructive. So Darwin was right to be disturbed by this development of eugenics out of his theory. And we cannot forget that Darwin himself was a staunchly against slavery, and spoke out very strongly against it, and actually put forward, the understanding that, look, these African people are human beings, and you can't claim that they're inferior or subhumans. They are full human beings, and they need to be treated like human beings. And this is wrong to enslave people. It is actually unchristian, you see. And there were quite a few people of Darwin's era who spoke out against slavery, and who, it was those kind of people who got it abolished in Britain, which was one of the first nations to abolish slavery in Britain, and then later in all the colonies. And it wasn't long after that America suddenly became independent. So the other point that I wanted to make really is that the idea of patriarchy that Jordan Peterson touches on, and also H. Thomas Ackermann here, because he said, we are living in a patriarchy, and Jordan Peterson says we're not living in a patriarchy. And so what I've explained is that, look, because Jordan Peterson hasn't quite got it on that level either, he's right that we're not living in a patriarchy, but he doesn't state, as I understand, that, look, we are living in an oligarchy, and we have been living in an oligarchy for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. Well, in Britain, it's over 1,000 years, it's no on and off. But basically, for a true patriarchy to operate as a ruling power, I'm not talking about fathers, individual fathers, but for patriarchy to operate as a ruling power, a governing force, as it were, then you need a matriarchy, you see. Because without a matriarchy with equal power, the patriarchy cannot exist. And that's why the matriarchy was crushed, precisely to topple the patriarchy. And we have ever since been living in an oligarchy, and that's why Jesus understood this perfectly. This is why I know that Jesus was a host to the Golden Light intelligence, which I've explained repeatedly. I did witness April 1992, Golden Light, universal Golden Light being. Jesus taught us to pray to our Father who art in heaven, you see. Why? Because that ruling patriarchal consciousness isn't here on earth. It was killed. Yes, the individual dads are out there, but there's also a lot of individual dads that are following the oligarchical construct of male, which is this antiquated Roman construct of, a cold-hearted brute, and anybody who, any male who expresses compassion or care and things like this, mercy, kindness, he is a sissy. He's a weak man. Strength is in denying the emotions, oppressing the emotions. That is where apparently male power arises from, you see. But it isn't really a male power, it's an oligarchical power and an oligarchical construct of a male. And so, you know, and then going back to Jordan Peterson's view on the lesbian, gay, transgender stuff, it's a very complicated arena, the issue of homosexuality and transvestites and transsexuals, because the human psychology is so messed up with these constructs. The female gender construct and the male gender construct, that we are psychosexual beings as well, you see. So there's a lot of factors into why somebody might be a homosexual. There are people who are born of indeterminate gender, so, you know, they won't really know whether they're going to be male or female until they hit puberty. There are people who become homosexual because they were abused as a child, either by a heterosexual or a homosexual. There are people that become homosexual because on some level of their subliminal understanding of the world, they find it difficult to form a relationship on an unequal premise. So if they think women are inferior, then they aren't actually attracted to an inferior sex. You know, they want an equal partnership. That is what turns them on. So those type of people who've become homosexual probably wouldn't be homosexual in a world where women had equal power, which certainly they haven't got, and where a matriarchy actually existed, because then there would be a power with that female that then would attract those males, you see. So, and then there's all kinds of other varying factors, which, yes, the media, drugs can. Yeah, I do know one person who suddenly decided he was homosexual after he'd taken some drugs and got together with some people who convinced him to participate in homosexual activities, and after that he decided he was gay for a while until he stopped taking the drugs and then decided that, no, actually I'm heterosexual. You see, there isn't just one thing, but generally speaking, the vast majority of people, because let's face it, the LBGT community, as it were, is a minority, because the vast majority of people are either female or male, and they try to adhere to the constructs that the external world, has both imposed on them and creates of them and for them to inhabit, you see. And at the moment, it's a very confusing time for both males and females, because there's all this women's rights stuff, and at the same time, women have been encouraged to use their sexuality as a form of power, you know, which really doesn't make any sense, because our power arises from our understanding, our intellect, and our care, consciousness, compassion, respect, understanding. You see, all of these factors come into play with the fittest of the fittest. And so when it comes to humans, as this idea of who is fit, then that would be the people who are most considerate, most compassionate, most conscious, most conscientious, and who live by conscience, you see. They would be the people most fit to lead as both male and females. or other genders, you know. But the idea is that there's a matriarchal power, that the female, the feminine, and the masculine equally share an understanding of each other and work together, and that the males take into account the female understanding, the females take into account the male perspective, because the male and female brains do work differently. And I understand what Jordan Peterson is saying there. But I also understand that he's actually struggling, really, to put forward his understanding. And I think he's somewhat disabled because of his own upbringing, which, from what I can gather, is quite a privileged upbringing, a privileged education, and that very privilege has denied him a perspective, you know, a deeper perspective. Whereas, because I'm coming from the bottom of society, I've witnessed that deeper perspective. I've grown up in a multicultural community. I came into contact with people of various genders, you know, lesbians, transvestites, transsexuals, butch type gays, you know, and I realised, you know, through talking to these people, I found out all that they were very, very different things that they decided that they were gay, you know. Like, there was one lesbian woman who just hated men because of the things men had done and the way men had treated women through history. She just hated men, so she couldn't have a relationship with a man. And I could understand that, even though she'd never been personally abused by a man. She felt such anger within her that's why she couldn't actually relate to a man. And I met gay people, you know, a gay man who had become gay because he was abused as a child by actually heterosexual men, you know. So, and you know, I won't go into all the stories, but they were all very different. There was only one person that I met who just knew that he was gay, and from a very, very young age, but actually became female, you know, had an operation to become female, which is a huge, huge decision. It is a very, very serious thing to do, and you have to be very, very sure about it. And I respect that person, and I feel she is actually very feminine. But at the same time, I understand that psychologically, some males are persuaded to believe that they are actually female just simply because they are in touch with their emotions and their compassion and their care, which isn't apparent in a lot of males who've bought into the mainstream narrative of what a man actually is, you see. So there is an immense area of confusion. So I can understand how, say for example, white supremacists might actually, well, not white supremacists, sorry, just white people generally, especially the upper class ones, will be very attracted to Jordan Peterson saying, well, you know, white people aren't racist and blah blah blah, and being white doesn't mean that you racist white people can be oppressed as well. And I understand what he's saying, you know, that this is true. That people of today cannot bear the guilt of what our people of the past did, but nonetheless, we accept we accept the responsibility not to repeat those patterns and to, well, to behave accordingly and not to carry these prejudice and racisms. But people do. People are still carrying this racist attitude. So I can understand why the so-called anti-racists get very upset, you know, to hear Jordan Peterson say this stuff that, you know, there's no such thing as white supremacy, when actually there is. But I understand what Jordan Peterson's trying to say, that it isn't about white supremacy really. It is actually about a consciousness that operates bereft of conscience, bereft of care, bereft of compassion, that isn't in the world to do good and to care and share, but really their whole existence is about me, and them taking whatever they can and using whatever excuse they can to justify what they're doing. So it's like, well, yeah, I can attack this woman and rape her because I'm bigger and stronger than her, because I'm a man and she's a female, and actually it's her fault, she tempted me, you see. Or I can use these people as slaves to work on my plantation because they're black and they're African and they're actually subhuman. Oh, I can use these people to work on a very low wage in my factory because they are illegal immigrants. And I can pay a low wage as possible to the workforce because these are poor people. I can give a substandard level of justice and legal representation to these people because they're poor. Because it's all about a race, isn't it? You see, it's about competition. And in the competition, that consciousness, bereft of compassion, care and conscience, the criminally sadistic, psychopathic, and, you know, when I say psychopathic, not all psychopaths are evil people who are intent on committing crimes, you know. A lot of psychopaths do some very important jobs and never harm anybody. But yeah, they are lacking. They do have that disability of empathy, that they find it difficult to empathise. They cannot empathise. But it doesn't mean to say that they're going to be a bad person and a criminal. And I think that's an important point to make, you know. And this is why we have to be very careful not to judge. So I don't look at a white person and think, you're a racist. I don't look at a black person and think, oh, you're a downtrodden, inferior human being. Okay? I don't look at a man and think, oh, you're a cold-hearted brute. Because I understand that in all the groups of people, and that's one of the things that I really appreciate that Jordan Peterson does make. And so what I'm trying to do here is clarify that a bit, because like I say, I think he is having difficulty, and I think that's because of his privileges, you know. So I'm coming from the bottom, and like, before I knew of Jordan Peterson, I've always stated that all these divisions are an illusion, which he does explain that. But within the divisions, you see, there are good and bad people. So it doesn't really make any difference, you know, if you split the male and female, say, well, the male's this and the female's that. Within those groups, you're going to find criminal types of people and law-abiding, caring, compassionate, conscientious people. And in every group, you're going to find that there's always going to be a minority of people who will do bad things to people for their own advantage. It doesn't matter whether they're gay, whether they're heterosexual, what race they are, what nationality. In every nation, we find criminals. You're going to find a rapist in every nation. You're going to find child abusers. But what you'll also find are power structures that operate on the same level. And when you're being governed for centuries by an oligarchical consciousness that's calling itself a patriarchy, that fundamentally depends on keeping the matriarchy crushed, because they know damn well that if that matriarchy ever truly rises up, so too will the patriarchy alongside it, you see. And so, in a sense, our patriarchy is like a budding consciousness. Well, the matriarchy is, because until we get that matriarchy, the patriarchy cannot be, you see. This is just a fact of life. This is a fact of life. And so, you know, Jordan Peterson is making some very important points. And I feel like, yeah, all right, he hasn't articulated it clearly in a manner that people generally can understand what he is talking about. So people cherry pick bits of what he said, and yeah, this group of people really love him and this group of people really hate him, and yet on both those polarities, they're both really a misunderstanding. Groups of them are misunderstanding really the narrative that he is attempting to put forward, and is having a lot of difficulty doing that simply because of his own privileges, and that he hasn't perhaps quite gone back far enough, because human psychology is something that has been evolving over time, and we are now at the stage of our psychological evolution into the consciousness of our universal being. You see, this is something that goes beyond the characters of this world that we're born into, you know, through circumstance and experience. Our universal being goes beyond gender. It goes beyond ethnicity. It goes beyond which nation we come from. It goes beyond culture. But at the same time, it allows us to pick up on the most valuable aspects of our cultures that we've lost because this oligarchical system has been imposed on us, and it's incorporated our certain aspects of our cultures that suits it. So, for example, in the British culture and most of Northern Europe, actually, we were of Druid faith, and we celebrated the equinoxes, the spring, the summer, the summer and winter solstice, and the spring and autumn equinoxes. And we can see how the religion of Christianity has absorbed those, which itself is an oligarchical construct, because, you know, if you listen to my video By the Will of God, which I'll leave under this, I explain how, you know, Jesus did not come to start a new faith. He came to re-establish Judaic culture, the culture of their faith, as guided by an intelligent, caring, loving, father-type God, and also he promoted the idea of matriarchy as well, the idea that God was both male and female, but, that bit has been cut out, hasn't it? Because the Romans usurped him, and they wrote the New Testament, and they decided what was going to be in it, and they turned him into this myth and fantasy about a virgin birth, and just so much lies they told about him. Oh, he was the son of God, and God killed him, I mean, it was by the will of God that he was sacrificed. These things are abominable, the lies that have been told about Jesus. But the people of the Druid faith, you see, when the Roman Church decided to implant itself in Britain and overthrow our Celtic Christianity, then, suddenly the winter solstice became Christmas, and the spring equinox became Easter, and the summer solstice was totally cast out as, sun worship. Oh no, we can't celebrate that. And then autumn's the harvest festival, you see. So, or in America, Thanksgiving. So, when we return to our true cultures, we realise that, culture basically it's fundamentally based on one's location on the planet. Culture arises from the climate and the resources of the lands that we inhabit. What is available, and what can we do with that? So, in Northern Europe, iron was quite widely available. So, the Northern Europeans made a lot of metalworks. The lands are quite green. We grew our own food, you see. People use whatever is available, and we are a species that have been through major catastrophes through thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So we've reached certain levels of civilization, and then it's all collapsed because of natural catastrophes that have hit the planet, and ice ages and things like this have disturbed. And so we need to learn, well, what happened in the past. So then we need to learn to be prepared for the future, don't we? So when we understand that we're living on a planet that has regular cycles of ice ages and periods in between these ice ages, then we can be prepared, can't we? So we don't get wiped out, and we don't have to start again from scratch. But the point is that each time we try to save as many people as we can. Except this ruling consciousness seems to think, oh yeah, we can just expend, everybody's expendable, except these few oligarchs who actually aren't fit to rule. They are not fit to formulate the next generation, precisely because they are not conscientious, living by conscience, care and compassion, you see. They aren't very far advanced along the evolutionary scale. They are materially advanced in the form of their possessions and the technology, but spiritually, psychologically, they're not. They aren't the fittest of the fittest. The people who won the races are the least fit, because they've been able to easily step over the stumbling block, compassion. that regular human beings just can't get past, because they just wouldn't do that to get rich. No matter how much money you paid them, they aren't prepared to starve somebody or kill somebody, you see. And so that is exactly why compassion has been placed for a stumbling block. And the real stumbling block, ignorance, is the head cornerstone of Luciferian law of might equals right to do as thou wilt. Of universal law, the head cornerstone is actually compassion, that has been set for a stumbling block, you see. So it's easy to see what we need to do. We need to restore compassion as the head cornerstone of the law. And so when a law is operating fundamentally on a premise of compassion, then that means that the law is equal for everybody, and that is where the idea of equality comes in. And again, Jordan Peterson picks up on equality and explains, well, everybody can't be equal. And he's right, of course we can't. I cannot be equal to H. Thomas Ackermann in the sense of, look, you know, he's older than me, he's more experienced, he's very talented in art. So how can I be equal to that? I cannot expect to have as much money as this person who's a professional and blah blah blah. You know, we're all, some people are disabled, some people are rich, some people are poorer. But when the law is operating fully as it should, universal law, operating with compassion as the head cornerstone, then the law is equal, applies equally to everybody. And a law that upholds our human rights will ensure that despite our differences, because we are a diverse species, despite our differences, whatever faiths we have, our ethnicities, our disabilities, our abilities, our genders, our physical strength or intellectual strength, our riches or poverty, well, I will say less money, our education, nonetheless, the law applies equally to all and delivers equally to all and upholds the human rights of all. And so, yes, there will be rich people, there will be poor people, but nobody will be destitute, nobody will be homeless, nobody will be without healthcare. Everybody will have an opportunity for education, because the law is operating equally for all to ensure that every person fundamentally is respected first and foremost as a human being, before we start to think about what gender they are, or what colour, or what class, or what faith or ethnicity. First and foremost, you're a human being. First and foremost, you are entitled to respect, dignity, compassion, acceptance. You see? And the people who ignore that, who ignore the law, who ignore people's rights, they're the ones that fall down on the stumbling block of ignorance. You see, people notice that person did that to me. And when you're living lawfully and you're in a society that fundamentally has accepted and adopted universal law, and with compassion as the head cornerstone, when somebody does something out of place, you know, steals or insults somebody, people recognise that that person, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. Because in a lawful society, nobody needs to steal, you see. So if people are behaving in ways that are offensive or harming people, then those people obviously are taken out of society and investigated to find out, well, what is wrong with you? What is going on with you? Are you good? And then they need to be assessed, don't they? Are you going to continue to be a danger to society? Or even yourself? So in that case, we're going to have to detain you until we work out what is wrong with your consciousness that's making you do this, and whether we can assess your level of risk, if you're going to be a risk continually, or if you can be cured, assisted, so that you're no longer a risk. You see, that's because this idea of crime and punishment, it's like the punishments are actually also creating the criminals, because you get very sadistic people that enjoy a chance to justly be sadistic. You know, very sadistic people in the times of, say, the witch hunts would actively enjoy participating in the brutal, horrific deaths of members of their community. There'd be people who would profit by the fact that these people were suddenly taken out of the community. Oh, that means I get their house and all their possessions, you know. There's all kinds of things go on, and, you know, we need to understand that. And so, yeah, I understand what Jordan Peterson is saying, but I'm taking it a step further. I'm, in a way, clarifying it. And also what H. Thomas Ackermann is saying. I understand that we are living in a patriarchy. Of course, it's men that are governing our world. He's right in that sense, and I understand what he's saying. He's right. Yes, it is males that are governing our world, that are governing this world, and females have been very oppressed. But just because those males call themselves a patriarchy, it doesn't mean that is what they are. And we know that they, as I've explained, they cannot be a patriarchy because there is no matriarchy, you see. And I'm talking, as I say, I'm not talking about individual men and women, mothers and fathers. I'm talking about the ruling consciousness that governs us, that we live by, under who dictates, controls and creates and designs this world and constructs it. We are not living in a patriarchy in that sense. We are living in an oligarchy. Those males might be males, they may even be fathers, but the power structure, the power that they're serving, that they're living under, is an oligarchy. It is not a patriarchy, you see. And so, in that sense, humanity itself is the female, the populace, the general populace, and we are all a widow, because the law is not established. The true law, we're not living by the true law that serves our universal beings, which, when we understand that we are universal beings and we are eternal beings, and that our light body is a fact of life, and it's a scientifically proven fact in terms of quantum energy, there's no getting away from it, that is when we move out of this consciousness, this oppressive, backward, antiquated consciousness that's essentially carrying out the plans, continuing to carry out the plans of dead people, mostly males. You see, so it is a dead head, and that's why it's corrupt, because that's what happens. A dead body is corrupt. It's dangerous. It kills. It causes disease. And people are suffering from psychosexual diseases that give them urges to abuse children and to enjoy a child, to take pleasure, derive pleasure from a child's suffering. Never mind what the child's suffering, it's what's going on in their heads that's important, you see. Selfishness. And these are the kind of consciousnesses that are going to rise when we live outside of the law. And that was why, Jesus came to warn us, various prophets have come to warn us about the consequences of living outside the law. And unfortunately, it seems like Christians of today, especially in America, these far-right extremist Christians, can't wait to fulfill Revelations. I mean, who would want to fulfill that horror? Really, And as I've repeatedly explained in my videos, the people of Nineveh weren't so stupid, were they? There's some very, very, very important things that we need to learn and understand to move on into the future. If we are going to be successful as a species, if we are going to find happiness in life on our planet, if we are truly going to appreciate ourselves and our children especially. And at the moment, we are not. We, as a species, collectively, under this ruling oligarchical consciousness, we are harming the children. This education system, for example, that's set up in Britain and has been an example to the rest of the world, it seems, that have followed the same structure, the same with our law and money system and everything. Okay? The education system is antiquated in the extreme. It's designed for what adults hundreds of years ago thought a child was. Something to be told what to do. Not a developing human being, a minor human being, an inferior, unimportant human being who has to be trained like one of their pet creatures, you see. Rather than, well, what is there in this child? What is this child's vocation? Because nature provides the leaders. The leaders in a lawful society, the leaders will rise. They are capable. They're born to be capable to lead because of their abilities. And there are people that will excel in art, and people who will excel in farming, and people who will excel in medical care. Nobody has to entice people to do these things by offering them large sums of money and wages and blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh yeah, you'll get up in the world if you become this or that. So, we're getting the wrong people as teachers, the wrong people as doctors, as well as the right people. The people who are lucky enough to be able to fulfil their vocations. But at the moment, that isn't happening. There's people sat behind supermarket tills who really should be running the country's economy, Everything is unbalanced. Everything is imbalanced. Because we're living under an oligarchy, you see. A patriarchy and matriarchy know how to raise a child. And they understand. The child tells them, like, yeah, this is me. This is who I am. These are my abilities. So, the education system is fundamentally out of order, especially because it's teaching children in age groups, which has nothing to do with a child's ability. One child of 7 might be more advanced intellectually in certain areas than a child of 10. A child of 10 might be better off learning the same things that 5-year-olds are learning. But there's nothing to say that by the time that 10-year-old is 15, they won't have far surpassed the 7-year-old that was ahead of them. It's because you can't work it out like that. You just cannot teach children. You just teach children. Like, for example, you want to teach children how to read and write. Well, teach them about the solar system. Let them learn to read and write while they're learning about our universe. Every child is interested in the universe, in the planets, in the stars, in space. It's something that captures their imagination, that they're interested in. Oh, yeah, how do you write star? Oh, yeah, that's a star. Moon, yeah, let's learn about the moon. They will learn maths, they will learn literature, and they will actually be learning about a reality. And then from there, once they start getting more and more skilled in the reading, writing, maths, while they're learning about the universe and our planet, and then they'll move on to the geology and geography, and that's when you start finding their vocations. Who is going to do what? Who will move on to history? Give them the opportunities. Give them the opportunities to develop, to learn. Don't organise them into these divisions. You see? But then there's also the understanding that yes, males and females are different. So, by the time young people hit puberty, then they're going to learn they're going to need teaching about how to handle their sexuality, aren't they? They're going to need to be taught about how to handle pregnancy, whether they're male or female, because if you're a male and you're going to be relating to a woman, a female, then you end up, one day you're going to be a dad. So you're going to have to know about menstruation, you're going to have to know about pregnancy, you're going to have to know about childbirth, you're going to have to know about postnatal experience, condition of a female. You're going to need to know about the needs of a child, the needs of a baby. You're going to have to know these things. Who is going to teach them? They're not being taught these things. I mean, in Britain recently there was a big fuss because, hundreds of Muslim parents took their children out of a school that was teaching about homosexuality and transgender and stuff. And people were saying, oh, well, if I took my children out, there'd be a fuss. They can do it, but yeah, they're right to do it. But quite a lot of people were saying, no, they aren't right to do it. But I understood both sides of the argument, because I understand the way that this world works and how the education providers, those who design the school curriculums and stuff, will do things like that will just antagonise people. And I made the point that, why are they teaching children about transgender and homosexuality and stuff, and not instead teaching them about how to relate to the opposite sex, or to have a relationship with somebody, whether they're the opposite sex or not, just how to have how to relate human to human in a compassionate, respectful way. You see, how can you teach a female to be like a female or a male to be like a male? You can't. They just are male and female. Whether or not they will you choose to have relations with the opposite sex or the same sex is their personal choice. It's not something that you can teach them about in school. And it's totally ridiculous to do it. And it can be described as leading and putting ideas into their heads. You let the children make up their own minds. I made a video called, what was it? Tamboy. Tam girl, as opposed to tomboy. The idea that because some young little boys enjoy dressing up like girls and playing with girls' dolls, that means they're a homosexual, they're going to be they are naturally transgender is completely ridiculous. Because we've all heard of the tomboy, the girl that wants to wear boys' clothes and do boys' things, but we haven't automatically assumed that, oh yes, she's going to be a lesbian when she grows up. Because you cannot impose a sexuality onto a child because a child is a non-sexual being. You see, that's the point that I'm trying to make. That adults are telling this child, oh yeah, so, you know, as soon as you get to 11, 12, you know, we'll give you these hormone suppressants because you obviously want to be a girl, don't you? You know. How many little girls over the generations have been tomboys? But they've not grown up to be a lesbian, have they? You know, they've grown up and had heterosexual, they've been heterosexual. So, you know, there's a lot of things to think about, and I know this has been a long video, but we need it. I'm sorry. You need it. People need to understand these, and I'm just putting out, as I say, casting light, casting light, casting light. And that is what we need to do. For those who do understand, it is my duty to share my understanding. Because those who know have a duty to inform the mystified, you see. Because it isn't people's fault that they're mystified. And the idea is that we liberate each other and we share the light, you know, and we burn away the old antiquated nonsense that has filled our minds. Let them go. Let that light shine inside us and burn away the negative thoughts, the confusions, you see, and become a whole human being. Reconnect, connect, move out of the again, an imposition of cognitive dissonance that is literally imposed on people, because otherwise how could people live? You know, everybody'd be in a state of depression. So obviously this cognitive dissonance is operating as a psychological mechanism that is keeping this world going, because people are cut off, and because everything is so confusing, and because they can't really make their minds up. Like, yeah, I don't really like gays, but then on the other hand, I do like my gay friend, you know. Oh, I don't like to think about people doing this. You know, heterosexual people, especially males, say they find it disgusting what gay people do. But perhaps gay people find what heterosexual people do disgusting. You know, it's, we have no right to be intruding on individual people's lives as long as those people are behaving lawfully and respectfully and humanely and living consciously, conscientiously, with care, conscience and compassion. You see, we have no right to be judging each other. It is none of our business what consenting adults do. Okay? Unless they're committing crimes against other people. Okay? Unless they're putting society at risk, the public at risk, then who has a right to complain? Who has a right to judge? You know, the only people that we need to judge is really ourselves. We judge ourselves. How have you done today? What have you done right? What have you done wrong? Why did you do this wrong thing? Find out. Not to punish yourself, but to do better, to live better, to strive to live better every day. You know. I mean, that's been my self-development. And I think it needs to be all of our self-development. We don't celebrate life enough, you know. That's one thing that is missing. The celebrations, we just don't celebrate enough. We don't celebrate our planet, we don't celebrate the universe, we don't really celebrate Jesus as the real human being example of the male man that he was and continues to be, because that true human self is in every single human being on this planet. As Jesus explained, I am in everybody. You see, this idea of the second coming, it's not Jesus is arriving as one individual, but Jesus, us finding Jesus within ourselves as the archetypal male human that supports the archetypal female human. And as I say, I think female consciousness is key. That when the true female consciousness arises, female intelligence, female compassion, then that's when Jesus arrives as well in humanity. When the males understand that, look, she is your power. When she has power, she is your power. Together, you two prevent this oligarchical criminal from taking control in order to satisfy their depraved desires. Because only a criminal would want to remove compassion as the head cornerstone and replace it with ignorance, you see. It is the criminals taking over the police station, isn't it? In that sense. So, yeah, this has been a long video, and thank you for taking time to listen. I hope that people have learned something from it. I hope my message is getting clearer. Okay? That is what I hope. I hope that humanity is picking up, whether you're at the top or the bottom of society. I hope that people are waking up, you know, and that people can accept the essence of Jesus' message that is forgiveness, compassion. But we can't be forgiven if we can't accept that we've done anything wrong, you see. And we need to lose this idea of punishment. Crime, when we ignore reality, we suffer. So when we ignore the reality of universal law and the intelligence that created us, then yes, we're going to suffer, aren't we? If we ignore the advice as a child, like, don't put your hand in the fire, which a child might innocently ignore that advice because they don't know what it's like to be hurt by fire. So the child puts the hand in the fire. Oh my gosh, you've got burned. The child is crying. It's not a punishment. It's just cause and effect. It's reality. And, you know, we need to lose this idea of punishment, that people need to be punished for doing wrong things. What people need is to be assisted to do the right things, and for us to be vigilant and recognise when people are doing very, very wrong things, and to not further empower them to do those wrong things, and actually to do everything in our power to prevent them from doing wrong things that are harming people, that are harming our planet. You know, and that this intelligence, it goes beyond the politics of this world, doesn't it? It goes beyond all that, because when you live with intelligence, every nation will be independent, every society will have its own culture, everybody will have it, people will still have all the different faiths, and universal law will control, dominate the finances of this world, the economy of this world. Every nation that lives according to universal law, you know, it isn't difficult for a true faith to incorporate universal law, because every true faith is celebrating God, apparently, and in service to God. So every faith can incorporate universal law and abandon the old traditions of that faith that new knowledge was proven wrong, you see. So new knowledge is proving a lot of things wrong. So we've all got to develop, you know, because we can't go living as we did in the past. Life changes, time changes, and we're talking about the dead wood that will kill the tree of life. If we do not remove this dead wood, the tree of life cannot grow. The tree of life will die because the dead wood will kill it eventually, you see. So, as I say, thank you for taking time to listen. I hope I've explained a few things, like I say, that people are enlightened a bit more, and that people find courage in the light that I'm sharing, that people find courage, that people find faith in what they know. Have faith in what you know, not in what you just simply believe, okay? Though there's nothing wrong with believing somebody that is experienced or educated. You know, I believe my doctor if my doctor says this, and this, even though I'm not educated in that field. There is you know, we trust some people, don't we? So, you know, we trust certain individuals and have faith in what they're telling us, you see. And certain people we don't trust, we don't have faith in. And then in having that faith, then we do our own little bit of research and we arrive at, oh yeah, well actually, yeah, that person is right. You know, be sure, be sure. Jesus said, be sure. After witnessing that light being, it's taken me 27 years. After 27 years now, I am very, very sure. I would not be sharing this if I wasn't sure that what I'm sharing is accurate and for the good of our planet and the good of humanity, the goodness of humanity, and for the future of life on our planet and for the child of humanity, you see. And that's why I'm prepared to give over an hour of my time sharing this knowledge, my experience, my learning, to bring everything together, to bring humanity together, to erase the divisions. And, you know, as I say, here Jody Wilson Raybould is in the sense she is she's part of the rising matriarchy, isn't she? You know, and look, a true patriarch in the form of H. Thomas Ackermann, he's with her straight away. Do you see what I mean? And I'll leave you H. Thomas Ackermann's video about Jody underneath this so you can understand exactly why he gives us so much support, you see. Perfect example. So I think that just about wraps this up, you know. I think I have explained why you know, what Jordan Peterson is trying to say, but maybe he's missed a little bit, that there is a bit of confusion there, with H. Thomas Ackermann when he's talking about patriarchy. And so I'm just trying to level it out between them both, because they're both right in one sense, but then in another sense, they've both got it slightly wrong. But like I say, that's not their fault. That doesn't mean, oh, 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 you was wrong about something. You know, I was wrong about something. I was wrong about a lot of things until I, I witnessed this event of light being. So I can't say, oh, I am some superior human being. I mean, I had a profound experience. In a way, I've been blessed. All right, the blessing is a curse in this world, but nonetheless, it is a blessing. It is a blessing. Intelligence, enlightenment is always a blessing. And that blessing goes to everybody.